Now over the international break, I've been taking a look at my top transfer targets for this upcoming game week, and in today's video we're going to be going through all of those and of course all the key data you need to make the best decisions this game week. Now before we dive into today's video, I just want to say that if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, make sure you're liking today's video, getting your comments in, and of course hitting that subscribe button as we are on our road to 10,000 subscribers, hopefully by the end of this year. First off, let's start off with the 11FI data. Again, there will be a link to this in the description if you want to go and check it out for yourself. Some amazing features over on their website. First off, we're going to take a look at predicted clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks. And as you can see, I don't think there's any kind of real shock here. It is the 3 kind of standout and best defences so far in the league: Arsenal, Manchester City and Liverpool as well. Liverpool's next few are a little bit tricky, and you can definitely see that on the FDR rating as well. Their fixtures do start to fall off, and I do feel with the injury to Alisson as well, it could potentially mean selling off the likes of Robertson, selling off Trent, and obviously if you've got Alisson, selling him off as well, as he is out for 6 weeks. So I do feel in the short term probably could be worth looking to sell those Liverpool defenders off. However, as we can see here, 10, 11 and 12 are still pretty decent fixtures for that Liverpool defence, and still a high probability in terms of a clean sheet. City have great fixtures for the next 5, so definitely worth considering some of their defenders, and we will be talking about Rico Lewis a little bit later in today's video, because I do feel for the budget you're paying for him, 4.7, a very, very attacking player, playing out of position, getting into the right positions, and again with decent clean sheet data. Arsenal, I would say, even if I've got the Arsenal players, probably still worth holding on to them. As we can see, still decent projected clean sheet opportunities. In terms of other teams maybe to potentially consider for kind of maybe a wild card, or looking at those differentials, United's defence is 4 for projected clean sheets. Again, I've been speaking about this United fixture swing over the last few days and whether or not it is worth kind of investing into it, and I definitely think the 11FI data is backing that up from a defensive perspective. Brentford as well, they've got a good set of fixtures all the way up until around game week 13, so again, if I wasn't a wild card, Flecken definitely would be interesting me, Pinnock and Collins as well as the 2 cheap centre-backs. Spurs are on here as well. Despite them conceding quite a few sloppy goals this season, they've actually done quite well in terms of XG conceded. So people like Pedro Porro, Van der Ven could also be very, very good shouts. Forest, Everton and Palace do complete this list. And again, I do feel there's some fantastic budget enabling picks within these sides as well. Let's move on to projected goals for the next few weeks. Again, coming from 11FI. And as we can see, it is a very similar top kind of order over the next few. However, Arsenal do drop out with some more difficult fixtures coming up. So maybe would suggest potentially switching away from Bukayo Saka and kind of Havertz over the next few weeks. Probably once this Bournemouth fixture is done, there is quite a big drop off compared to some other sides as well around here in that list. City obviously topping it, and I do feel that matchday 9 game week that we've kind of been highlighting for a few weeks now is going to be the driving factor behind why they are top, and maybe when that fixture does pass, we might see them drop down to maybe 2nd or 3rd within this list. We've also seen City lose their last two games, should I say, on XG. They've not been as creative, with obviously Kevin De Bruyne missing from the side, and that has impacted Erling Haaland's performance and numbers as well in terms of it's FPL, so maybe something to consider going forward. Liverpool 2nd, so the next 2 don't look great for Mohamed Salah. However, after that, there's still some great fixtures in here, and as we can see, kind of with all the other teams, maybe we're looking at other premiums as well, the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, City. There's nobody really clear and kind of stand out across that period, so maybe Mohamed Salah could be one of those players that you do go and keep. Spurs are definitely an interesting kind of team at the moment in terms of those attacking data as well, so Brennan Johnson, Maddison, and of course Dominic Solanke all going to be within our radar as well. Same goes for Manchester United attacking players. Definitely some scope for some potential there to potentially go for. Obviously the teams down the bottom, I do feel it's pretty self-explanatory which teams you should be looking to avoid at this moment in time. But of course, if you do need some further ramifications, take a look at the projected goals and clean sheet on the 11FI website yourself. The first player I wanted to take a look at today is, of course, Cole Palmer. He's one of the most transferred in players yet again this week. 7 appearances, 6 goals and 5 assists for him. And as we can see, some pretty good data as well to go alongside it. However, people are kind of, making up their minds and maybe bringing him in ahead of a very, very difficult game against Liverpool away. They are currently top for XG conceded. I think it's around 1 point something. It's ridiculously low anyway. Liverpool have been fantastic at the back so far this season. However, with this now new Alisson injury, I do feel that could have a massive impact. If we look back to last season, Alisson was actually third for, I think it was, goals prevented amongst all goalkeepers last season. So he has a big contributing factor to this Liverpool side. And that's not saying Kelleher is a bad option. It is just saying that this Liverpool defence will be a lot weaker. So maybe that opens the door up to potentially take a look at Cole Palmer as a asset, because that was always kind of the worry for me, was they were going up against Liverpool and Arsenal within their next 5. 2 of the most difficult defences over the past few seasons that we've seen with XG conceded and in terms of just general clean sheets. So going up against them, I was always a little bit hesitant on bringing in Cole Palmer. However, now I do feel a lot more confident about him with that Alisson injury. It makes me feel that maybe, Chelsea could get a goal or 2 out of that game. Newcastle and United fixtures, I know they're grey on the ticker, but for me, I think they're probably green at the moment, the way both of those sides have started the season. Arsenal at home is still a difficult fixture regardless, and Arsenal will still be a very rigid and solid defence. However, after game week 12, I feel that's where a lot of people are going to be looking to jump on Cole Palmer and potentially this bandwagon. But there's definitely now, with that Alisson injury, I think scope to potentially go for Cole Palmer. Like I said, Alisson does play a big contributing factor into Liverpool's defence and their defensive numbers as well. So you do feel like Cole Palmer could get something out of that game. I don't hate the United and Newcastle fixtures. It is just that Arsenal one where you would have, obviously, the issues. And I do feel maybe if you're kind of looking at him for that week, Liverpool haven't got the worst fixture that week, so maybe it could be worth potentially holding on to somebody like Mohamed Salah for that period. Obviously, though, I do feel with this injury to Alisson, like I said, I feel that for me has potentially changed my position on Cole Palmer, because I'm not doubting he's an absolutely wonderful player and a fantastic FPL asset. That's never been the problem. It's been the teams that he's going to be facing and their strong defensive records. Now with that injury, I do feel it does open the door up a little bit. Let's move on to our next player, and it is going to be the 2 Spurs boys. I covered them in the differential video because I couldn't believe how low owned both of these lads were. As we saw with the projected goal numbers from 11-5, Spurs are actually third over the next 6 game weeks, and they've actually been really, really good. They're actually top of XG created so far this season already, so I think definitely worth investing in with some great fixtures coming up for them. James Maddison and Brennan Johnson have kind of been the 2 standouts. Dominic Solanke as well has been an also decent asset, but I wanted to cover these 2. I know a lot of people are probably going to be looking at maybe switching off a Luis Diaz or kind of other alternative midfielders that do fall away in terms of those fixtures. I'm thinking like Semenyo as well for that Brennan Johnson replacement. So for me, what do you get for that extra 1 million that, Maddison is doing over Brennan Johnson? Well, the big answer is assists. It is. And it's all the set pieces that go with that as well. He is a very, very creative player. And so far this season has started it how he started last season. And when he's in this mode, when he's in this period, and with great fixtures for a very, very attacking side, I think he could be an absolute gem at 7.5 million. If I did have Diaz and I already had Brian and Mbeumo, I would probably be lining up a move to James Maddison. The fixtures are there. Of course, it keeps the kind of, price bracket within that midfield if any other options do kind of open up around that period. And I do feel with Maddison having the corners, set pieces and stuff like that, it does make him a slightly better player over Brennan Johnson. Obviously, Son's been out as well, and I do feel that that will start to impact Brennan Johnson's potential minutes as well. He sometimes plays on the left, however, has been doing exceptionally well on that right-hand side so far this season. And as we can see, it is paying dividends for this Spurs side. And I don't feel for the moment he is in any danger of being dropped from this side. I think he's very, very much nailed. And for 6.5 million could be a great way into a pretty decent attack that started the season great and has some great numbers coming up if you look to that 11-5 data. Let's move on. Let's take a look at... I wanted to kind of correlate all the cheap defenders into one big kind of scoop, because I know a lot of people are going to be looking at them whether or not they're on a wild card. Obviously, certain teams' fixtures are starting to fall away. I'm thinking kind of, your what's the team? Aston Villa. Obviously, Ezri Konsa went off injured as well, so if you have picked up some of their players or got Ezri Konsa, Mazraoui as well has unfortunately kind of contracted a heart condition, is now going to be out for potentially 2 months or potentially even longer as well. So people are going to be looking around this 4 4.7 to all the way down to 4 million price range. And what I've done is highlight my favourite players to potentially be picking up, and I thought we'd have a discussion about each and every single one of them. First off, let's start off with a man I'm not going to recommend to you guys. It is going to be James Justin. I brought it up because he just seems to be picking up attacking returns, but as you can see from that expected goal involvement, it is minuscule. And I do feel like his best two fixtures here for a percentage chance of a clean sheet are away from home. Nottingham Forest is a green, but they're actually pretty decent as a side for me, and I do feel that they will comfortably go and beat Leicester on that Friday night game anyway. But for me, his best fixtures are away from home, where, of course, naturally there is a lower percentage chance of a clean sheet. And as we can see from his expected goal involvement, it is minuscule compared to a lot of these other players on this list. And I feel like, for me, it's probably going to be an easy avoid. Next up is going to be Collins, and I feel we might as well throw Van den Berg in here as well. Collins has been the main kind of dominant set-piece target for Brentford, and that's been a big switch. Usually it's Ethan Pinnock, he's still receiving some of them. However, it is Collins that is kind of stealing that limelight away from him. As we saw with the 11-ify data as well, there's really, really good projected clean sheet odds coming up for Brentford over the next few weeks. United away, not the easiest, but they'll definitely have a set-piece plan, and with Brentford, they take so much kind of due diligence into set pieces and do so much research on certain teams' weakness that they exploit it. And when they get their players, they sometimes don't even need clean sheets because they're picking up attacking returns. I watched an amazing video as well about how Brentford are now using kickoff as a way to score goals. That's why they've scored so many goals from the start of games, because they found a way to exploit it. That's what Brentford do, and Brighton to certain extent as well. They're teams that exploit things that you don't even think about in games. Kickoffs, goal kicks. These guys are the masters of that. And when you can get defenders that are obviously going to do quite well off the back of that, I think for me is definitely worth some consideration. In terms of Van den Berg as well, at 4 million. I know a lot of people were umming and ahhing, and I was one of those, whether or not he was actually going to feature within a back four system. He has, but I do think maybe still err on the side of caution. They do have Rico Henry coming back from a long-term injury, and again, he might start to see some minutes and potentially lead to Van den Berg being dropped from the side. Moving on to Van der Ven, again, we spoke about with Spurs earlier in the 11-ify section. I definitely think he could be a decent option at 4.6 with some good clean sheet data. Same goes for Aina as well. Forest have been one of the best defenders for XG conceded so far in this season. They're currently sat third, and since Nuno's appointment as well, they've also been a really, really good defence in terms of that XG conceded numbers. Not too much to write about in terms of creativity, but for sometimes for 4.5 million, a defender that just keeps clean sheets with great fixtures, you ain't going to kick that out of bed, are you? Let's move on to, I would say, the kind of the spicier picks down here. First off, we're going to start off with Aït-Nouri. Now, for me, he is going to be recommended as kind of one of the topper picks, because the City fixture, yeah, if you can bench him, great. 4.4 million, though, is a steal for a player that we've seen last season and this season continuing as well, can get himself goal involvements. The second best expected goal involvement on this list, the second highest predicted points as well over the next 3 game weeks, and that includes a fixture against Manchester City. So that shows how much the Fantasy Football Hub model is rating him to potentially go and pick up some mad hauls across that way. And with the positions, and I said that expected goal involvement is a really good pickup. Now, someone pointed out in my comment section in the last video, a really, really good point, that he is currently on 3 yellow cards. So if he did pick up one in the Manchester City, you would be running that risk of him obviously picking up a suspension across these great fixture runs that Wolves have got coming up. So maybe something to monitor on that one. Rico Lewis, again, another spicy pick. I do feel like he's the lowest for predicted points because it is quite hard to judge the minutes with, of course, Pep Roulette. But I think for me, he could definitely be worth doing it. City, as we saw, have really, really good projected data in terms of those clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks. He is playing out of position and is putting up decent data again, as we can see from that expected goal involvement. Of course, though, you are taking a chance with, of course, that old famous Pep Roulette. And then finally, it's going to be Leif Davis, and he's currently got the highest predicted points over the next 3 weeks, and that is because I would say they've got some pretty decent home fixtures. Obviously, that Everton and Leicester at home, they will be fancying Ipswich a little bit more to go and get the clean sheets compared to the away sides. Actually got the best expected goal involvement on this list, which is phenomenal for a £4.5 million player who is newly promoted to the Premier League, and that's great. The only problem with him is I would not be expecting clean sheets. Ipswich have actually been pretty dismal in that regard. They're currently ranked the worst side in the Premier League for XG conceded, and I don't think I'm going to see things change throughout the course of this season. So for me, that does just put him off because we will be heavily reliant on those attacking returns. And I think for me, I would prefer taking a little bit of a gamble on Rico Lewis or an 8 Nori as well, who've also got that explosivity to the game, but also play for better defences in terms of those numbers. So that's the way that I'll be going on that one rather than going for Leif Davis. But if you do fancy a little bit of a gamble, especially across the next few fixtures where those clean sheet percentages are going to be a little bit higher, then maybe he could be your man. Finally, let's finish up. Let's take a look at predicted points for the next 5 game weeks as well. Erling Haaland is top, and I do feel that is obviously going to be heavily impacted by that Southampton at home fixture as well. Salah, as we saw with the 11-5 data, the projected goals for Liverpool aren't too bad after this kind of the Arsenal game anyway, so could be a player that potentially could be worth keeping, but again, his recent performances have definitely left a little bit of a sour taste in owners' kind of mouths. Palmer's all the way down in 4th, which is a little bit of an interesting one. Chris Wood, we saw with Aina's fixtures in the last section, you know, definitely a player that could be worth considering. Decent fixtures, continuing just to kind of, you know, pick up points very, very consistently. So not a bad player to potentially be eyeing up. The Spurs boys, as we saw here, you know, Maddison, Solanke, and they've actually got Kulusevski above Brennan Johnson as well. So that's another interesting one. Again, we've kind of alluded to this Wolves fixture run as well, coming around game week 9, game week 10. Cunha could also be a great option in terms of that forward option as well. We saw last season very much capable of course, going and picking up those big scores. And then Bowen and Raul as potential differentials. I'm a little bit skeptical on Jared Bowen. I think they obviously faced off against a very, very weak Ipswich side and took full advantage of them. Speaking to a West Ham fan at work, he wasn't overly impressed with the performance either, so that doesn't bode too well. But Raul Jimenez, we covered in the differentials video with Adama Traore, and I definitely said the Villa fixtures, not the Fulham fixtures after the Villa game are really, really interesting and very, very tempting. And Raul Jimenez, I feel, has got that confidence back that we saw a couple of years ago from him at Wolves, so could be a decent differential, cheap forward option. Thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, if you did enjoy the video, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Make sure you're liking the videos as well and getting those comments in. But thank you very much for watching today, and good luck in Game Week 8.